Masvidal was talking about Covington. Masvidal said, I'm going to beat Colby so bad it's going to make what I did to Askren look merciful. And the only reason this caught my attention, I don't know that I've ever seen Masvidal talking about Colby. And you never know what's lip service, what's a headline. I don't know if somebody teed him up or what they asked him, but it does appear to me, if I'm to take him at his word, that Masvidal's getting ready to go on a title run. I mean, it looks like Masvidal, in his own mind, he's going to go beat Kamaru, and then he's going to go defend that belt. I just thought it was an interesting thing. I mean, we've seen 170's in a weird place right now. And it's not Usman's fault. So if Masvidal comes in and gets over him, and then Masvidal's got this new attitude, 170 might be safe. I mean, it might be going to work itself out. I'd like to see new policy, personally. I mean, on the heels of what we're going through at 170, and in light of us being told that Francis was offered Derek Lewis, and Francis said, I don't want to do the rematch with Derek Lewis, just bringing to you, if these things are in fact so, we got to have a new policy. I was reading something this morning, Eddie Hearn, who largely controls boxing, does a very good job, Eddie Hearn. But he was talking that Joshua and Tyson Fury are going to receive multiple offers this week for the venues that they could have their fight in. Kind of tipping my head going, what? You want to know why we don't talk about venues in the sport of MMA? Because it's not part of the sport. Very relevant that you stay with me here. Those guys are going to sit down and have to negotiate and talk about and have a say in where the match is going to take place. For me, that's weird. Been in sports since I was 9 years old. Never been in any such discussion. But it wasn't policy. That's apparently something they do in boxing. You guys might remember when Floyd was getting ready to fight Conor. Remember how weird that got? Because Floyd was putting in the contract where the gloves could be made, and they couldn't be made of horsehair, or they had to be made of horsehair. It was one of the two, but remember when we learned about horsehair in gloves? And they couldn't be made in China, they had to be made in Mexico, or vice versa, but this was an actual piece of the negotiation, and Conor's throwing his hands up going, put down whatever you want, I'll sign it. I don't know anything about that. But there was a lesson in that. Floyd wasn't being unreasonable. That's just something that they do in boxing. In boxing, they will even work out the weight class. We would never do that in MMA. Why? Because we have weight classes. We would never discuss the rules. Why? Because we have a set of rules, unified. We would never discuss the venue. Why? Because that's on the promoter to figure out. So the boxers aren't wrong to do this, and I'm not suggesting that they are. I'm suggesting that the policy of boxing, which is not the policy of MMA, and the reason the boxers do it is because it's within policy, we need a new policy. We need to get a great big board out that's got all the dates on it. And we need to identify ahead of time, what night is the heavyweight championship going to be contested? Right? They're a year out. They have a year of dates and venues and plans. Get it out and tell us where the heavyweight title is going to be contested. Tell us where the middleweight title is going to be contested. Tell us where the lightweight title is going to be contested. And I understand that the logistics of it don't work as smooth as to do this. Start making them work this smooth. Whatever headaches that locking that in ahead of time is going to cause, you are going to make up with them by not having to have these conversations. You could look at the PFL. You could look at the IFL. Couple of organizations that people are not studying because they're not lighting the world on fire in terms of revenue. I got it, but even a broken clock is right twice a day. It doesn't mean that they're all wrong. And one thing that the PFL and the IFL, in all fairness, PFL doing a great job of, IFL did do a great job of, they told you ahead of time where everything was going to be contested. It was a different policy, but it also stopped you from coming in and having some of these ridiculous negotiations. I don't know where Tyson Fury and Joshua, and they're going to pick a venue. I don't know anything about that. I don't know about the horsehair and the glove made in China or the glove made in Mexico that Floyd was talking about. I don't know a damn thing about it, but I also don't know where Francis, as the new champion, is coming in and saying, I don't want to fight somebody. I don't know anything about any of this. This is all very weird for me, but Francis isn't wrong. And neither are the boxers that are getting ready to pick a venue. If that's within the policy, somewhere along the way, there became a policy that even if you have a contract, we're going to talk and negotiate every single fight. The whole point of having a contract is so that there's nothing that needs to be discussed. There's nothing to discuss. That's already done. Now we're just going to figure out who and where. So I would suggest that the meeting go like this when Francis come in. Hey, Francis, here's a board. Here's the nights the heavyweight title is going to be defended. If you're no longer champion, this board has nothing to do with you. But if you are the champion, this is the night you're going to defend. We will call and let you know who the top contender is. The end. The end. What am I going to be paid for? Well, I don't know. I don't know if you have a contract. I have 556 guys under contract. I don't have them memorized. You have one contract. I would assume you did. Why don't you tell me what you're going to be paid? That should become new policy. This whole thing of let's sign guys, let's build, and then let's talk to them before each fight. The entire reason you would do a 3-fight deal, a 4-fight deal, or a 6-fight deal is so that you don't have to do that. There is no other benefit that you get. That's a broad stroke. There's a few benefits that you get, but in all fairness, you go sign a contract as a promoter, you just put yourself up against it. You must offer that gentleman 3 fights. Something weird happens, like a pandemic, and the shows get canceled. If that guy wanted to call you on, it's not a great way to do business, but if he wanted to, you are legally bound to have offered him those fights or to send him a check. I bring that to you because the promoter doesn't really get a damn thing by locking himself in. He's now got to go figure out how to do this. I got all these guys with all these deals. I got to start finding venues, finding distribution partners. The promoter is truly up against it when he locks himself into a 3, 4, 5, 6-fight deal. The only thing that he gets is to not have to have these conversations over and over. To not have to have a dialogue and to re-talk about, what am I going to get paid? Tell me, go read your contract. That's what you're going to get paid. Who am I fighting? Let me work on who the number 1 contender is. That's who you're fighting. Here's the dates. We're going to contest this thing with or without you. Any real sport works that way. The Olympic Games are set. The date is set for every single game. It could be beach volleyball. You don't like something, don't show up. We're going to put a gold medal around a team on August 18th of 2021. That game is going to happen. For every single sport in the Olympics, the Super Bowl dates are set years in advance right now. I assure you, somebody's getting a trophy that day. You don't like it, you don't want to show up, you do not need to. Policy is different. Policy in boxing says they talk about what venue. I mean, that seems like a headache. Maybe those guys think it's great. I wouldn't want to get in a back and forth on that. You pick the venue. What do I give a damn? You go figure all that out. That's your job. I got ropes to jump. I got mitts to hit. I mean, it's one of those things, but those guys aren't wrong to do it if it's within the policy. And I'm only sharing with you, we've got to change policy. Something here has to change. The mere fact that somebody could be asked, who do you want to fight? And he's the champion. And he comes out and says, no, I don't want to fight. That's so foreign and so bizarre to the way that my mind works. But I can't blame anybody for doing it if other guys are getting away with doing it. Because that's what policy is. It's not rule. It's not law. It's a policy. It's got to change. If we never speak, ever, and you just read about this in the media somewhere, that's good enough. Because you're on the board, and I told you ahead of time, these are the dates for you to be ready for. There's nothing for us to talk about. That is my job. I will build the infrastructure. You get on the airplane. Don't even think you have to buy the ticket. I will send it to you. Just go do your job. Let me do my job. But we have got to change this policy. I think if you think about it in those terms, you'll understand the problem that we've got right now. The problem that we're running into is a problem that we created. And words started to get around. And I know how it works. Bunch of chatty Cathys at the gym. I see it all the time. I grew up in the gym. I used to be the guy that was eavesdropping on Evan Tanner and Randy Couture and Dan Henderson, these guys that had contracts that I was trying to get. So you start to learn. You start to learn the policy. It's just one of those things. It's got to be fixed. And promoters are going to be very hesitant to do that because there's a lot that goes into picking venues, and you need to kind of know who your champion is. And that will determine who's going to go into what city. So it's a little bit harder to do than what I'm saying. Do it anyway. Do it anyway. The back end and everything that's going to be smoothed out. I mean, I can tell you right now, the PFL doesn't deal with any of this stuff. I was just talking to Chris Camozzi. He's in the PFL. He knows right when the tournament is for his weight class. He's got his marching orders. He knows exactly what to do. I remember talking to Ben Rothwell right when he got his IFL contract, but Ben Rothwell was telling me how pumped he was on the IFL. And you want to know what he loved about it? He didn't know who his opponents were going to be, but he knew exactly what he was going to be paid, and he knew exactly when he was going to fight and at what weight class. He loved it. That's just one example. I could give you a ton like that, but I remember this specifically because Ben was so excited. Nowhere in there was, well, you're going to be in here with Roy Nelson tonight, and then you're going to have Fabiano Scherner over here. And then no. What policy says no. Policy says we're set in these dates. Here's what we're going to get. Here's what we're going to do. Whoever walks up. That's the way it works. I came up in dual meets. They were called dual meets for wrestling, but you pulled those straps up and you went against whoever stepped on that mat. It was never a discussion. There was nobody to talk to about it. There was nothing to talk about. And guess what? If that would have been the policy, we would have all talked about it. We would not have got on the mat and just pulled your straps up, shaking hands and gone. We would follow the policy, whatever it is. The policy is being followed right now. Got to change the policy. Get aboard. Here's the day. There is nothing left to talk about. I have two stories like that. I'll leave you on this note, but I'll personalize this real fast. I fought on the network debut of FS1. Main event, I fought Shogun. That was in 2014. I have never agreed to fight Shogun to this day. I have never been offered Shogun. To this day, the fight happened 7 years ago. I have never agreed to that fight. I have never been offered it. I fought Lyoto Machida in my last fight. I have never agreed to fight Machida. I have never been offered Machida. And not saying everybody has to go and do it the way that I did it. I'm not one of those guys. But I am sharing with you that there is something going on right now, and nobody's in the wrong. If you start looking around and seeing what's going on, I mean, watch what happens if Jon Jones gets a deal. Watch every champion sit out and stop fighting. Watch them walk away from belts, right? If Jon Jones comes back to a raise, Henry Cejudo, I mean, do you see the problem? It's the same exact thing. Watch everybody stop. And the same can be done the other way. Like what Chris Camozzi is going through and like what the PFL is doing. Set it up ahead of time. Here's what it is. There is no questions. There is nothing to talk about. The policy is different. Here's when you go to work. I will call and let you know against who.